We have been talking about Rhode Island from an economic development standpoint for years here on this show. Sometimes those concepts are really abstract, and we talk about what would be great if X, Y, or Z happened. And sometimes they're really concrete. And that's exactly what we're doing today as we take a look at the Rhode Island Public Expenditures Council's essentially an annual report that has given us some information that signals a lot of what we're feeling is true when it comes to stagnation and what feels right now like a lot of dead ends in Rhode Island. Michael DeBias is the president and CEO of RIPEC and joins us here on Bartholomew Time. Michael, thanks so much for your time today. And before we get into talking about the economic report card for this year, just a little bit on your background and how you got into this work.
Sure. So I've been with RIPEC since 2020. Before that, I was director of administration under Gina Raimondo for 5 years and had other careers in government and also in the private sector.
When you take a look at holistically Rhode Island right now, again, before we even get into just the report card and what the indicators are there, when you take a look at Rhode Island right now as somebody who understands economic development and industries across the board, what do you think is Rhode Island's inherent strength that we may or may not be playing into right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. This report that we put out is a little different for RIPEC diving into economic development. We do a quarterly key performance indicator report that talks about the economy, but in general, we are doing our research on budgets and public expenditure. So this is a little bit outside of our core area. But this report, what we did was we used publicly available federal data and just tried to compare Rhode Island to the country and to other states in New England, and also trend back 5 and 10 years. So, one thing, a lot of people in Rhode Island, when I ask them, where do you think we are on rank on median income? They will, Rhode Islanders will typically say, I don't know, 40, but we're actually 17th. So we need to keep in mind that we're above the U.S. average in terms of our median household income. And that's a fortunate thing. What this report points out, though, is once you start taking into account cost of living and taxes, we fall pretty far down. So we fall from 17th in median income to 36. So that has a big impact. So to your question, we're not, compared to our neighbors, Massachusetts and Connecticut and New Hampshire, we're not doing that well, but they're among the highest performing states in the country. So I think we need to start out that, things are not as bad as some Rhode Islanders think they are.
Right. No, and that is such an important thing to start with. And that statistic right there is an important framework because when we look at the problems we're solving, it's important to understand the scope of them. And while there are major challenges you've outlined in the report we'll go through right now, that doesn't mean that it's a lost cause. And when you start to look at the moment right now, paired with general affordability, optimism about the state of the world, et cetera, it's easy to lose focus on making an impact because it seems so discouraging. And look, you just listen to some talk radio and take a look at some comment sections on Our Town, Take Your Pick on Facebook. And it's easy to feel discouraged, but we're not in horrendous shape, as you just point out.
Correct.
We have to start this discussion breaking down Rhode Island's economic stagnation. And this is something that we have seen lagging growth in GDP per capita, labor productivity, things like that. What's your general executive summary on Rhode Island's economic stagnation over the last decade or so?
Yeah, I think we have these 6 measures that we put forth in the report, and our rank dropped in everyone except median household income, and many of them very significantly. And for every measure, our growth rate has lagged the U.S. Um, most significantly with something called gross domestic product and labor productivity. So I think the most troubling part of what we found, and we were surprised by it, was that our growth rates were lagging so much compared to the country. It doesn't mean we're going backward. It just means we're not growing as fast. And I think that's the more concerning part.
Is that because of the sectors that we're in, of which some are, as you point out, we have an over-reliance on certain sectors. But it seemed like for a long time, the idea was, well, we're going to be the blue economy super sector driver. We're going to be the Rotterdam of the Western Hemisphere and all the connected pieces of whether it's offshore wind or even fisheries, sensors, et cetera. There's a lot of work happening there. There's money being raised in the private sector around especially autonomous drones. But why, with all of that sort of hype on a super sector environment here in Rhode Island with the blue economy, have we not seen, even in that one space, the type of growth that could make up for some of that difference in loss that's led to stagnation?
Yeah, so I mean, it's important to point out that these are long-term trends, Bill, and not, point to one governor or one legislature. I mean, we've come through, deindustrialization a long time ago, and now we're in another period. And as a small metro, next to a larger metro, it is challenging with companies consolidating, and we're relatively high cost. So we start out with some disadvantages. I think there's been a lot of good work focusing on areas that could be high productivity, high growth, like wind, life sciences, blue economy. They have not yet become significant parts of our economy, but I think um, those efforts do make some sense.
Where else are we seeing over reliance, I should say? Where are we seeing over reliance in our job sector and sort of our workforce? And where are some of the major gaps that we have from a job training standpoint that could attract anybody, large scale, mid scale, small businesses that could expand our palette, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, what the report talks about is that we're first in the nation and in our reliance for our economy on a sector that includes education services, healthcare, and social services. Now, there's nothing wrong with those sectors, particularly some of them pay quite a bit, so they're high-paying jobs. But the over-reliance is an issue because those industries don't, those sectors don't bring a lot of wealth into the state. So, other than the research, they tend to be funded by revenues that come from in the state. And so they're different from information technology or manufacturing or companies that sell services regionally, globally, that bring revenue into the state. So I think we have to focus on growing those sectors. We have some of those, industries. We have financial services. We're pretty heavy in manufacturing. We're roughly the U.S. average. We have to understand that those are the things that fuel an economy. And I think when you look at what's happening, what's our focus, what's our policy focus of the State House? It tends to be more on the human services side. And I think we need to be thinking more about economic growth, economic development.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, we offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, our online programs provide the flexibility you need with a high-quality education you deserve. Learn from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online, learn anywhere with us.
You and your employees work hard for your customers. At HealthSource RI for Employers, we work hard for all of you. We offer access to 18 quality health insurance plans plus dental, flexible costs to meet your budget and get your staff what they need, and customized local support to guide you through it all. More than 1,200 Rhode Island employers choose health insurance through us. HealthSource RI. We work for you. HealthSourceRI.com/employers.
Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Newport Film. Visit newportfilm.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Waterfire Providence. Visit waterfire.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.
Where's the major gap right now? Because if you look at some of the work that Commerce Rhode Island has done, if you look at some of the, even on a micro level, I think we've seen an effort, if not fulfilled, work to get Rhode Island to become more of a life science hub than it already is, in tandem with the academics, so on and so forth. But where's the gap? Why do you think this isn't happening when these numbers aren't brand new?
We're going to, we're interested in RIPEC in doing a longer term effort because I don't think this is as simple as it appears. And I think attracting companies have become harder and harder as they're consolidating. To give you an example, we can look at college attainment. Everyone assumes that drives economic growth, or is that simply a function of prosperity? So, but I do think our workforce, the skills and education of our workforce need to be upgraded. I think we need to focus on affordability. I know the governor is focused on it, but our housing costs, and we're starting to permit more housing, but that eats into our standard a little bit. And by the way, housing production itself is a high GDP activity. So if we could just get more into that, but I think that the solutions are more difficult to come by, but I do think that we need to lean in on how can we incentivize. I'm not as big on chasing companies as much as creating an environment where companies want to come. So how can we incentivize that through easing regulation, perhaps making the tax climate better. But then I think we need to focus on upgrading our skills of our workers, and also making our state more affordable. I think those are kind of the three big things that we need to focus on. And once again, we have other urgent needs that we're dealing with, but what it means is we're not really dealing with this. There's some things we see it as a bond issue, and there's other efforts, but for you or anyone following the issues of the day that are being debated, this does not seem to be that high.
No, it does not. Where it pops up is in sort of tributaries that are direct tributaries, things like municipal tax caps. We now see, frankly, fiscal issues in Cranston, in North Providence, so on and so forth. And once it starts to hit people's wallets directly, maybe that's when it becomes more of a mainstream conversation. I want to kind of close this on something you mentioned, which is housing. And you note that rent stabilization is at minimum concerning and basically argue against it. And there are a lot of different arguments for and against this type of policy. But by and large, from a economic development standpoint, from a general growth standpoint, what's your argument against rent stabilization or rent controls in general versus a supply side model?
Yeah, we did a report on this that was commissioned by the Providence Foundation. We're very much against the idea of rent stabilization. We think it hasn't worked and does not make sense. But we do need a response for housing affordability. And I think looking at rental assistance, which we have essentially none of in Rhode Island in terms of state programs. We do administer federal programs, and also being more aggressive on allowing housing development. I mean, we're doing some good things. There's a lot of permits in the pipeline, but there's still a lot of resistance out there. So I think, it's not good enough to just say no to rent stabilization. I think we got to do some other things, but I don't think that's going to work. I think it's going to be disastrous, actually, with respect to, there's so many obstacles to development now in a city like Providence, particularly sky high property taxes. I just think this could really chill a lot of things and actually cause rents to go up, because a lot of landlords don't raise rents. And if they think they're going to not be able to do it once their tenant moves out, they're going to probably take advantage of that.
Right. Yeah, that has been an argument that, for example, Joe Paolino has been making, that he doesn't raise rents unless there's a turnover in his unit, even if that goes on for years or decades. So now he may be compelled to raise it 4%. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure on the municipal level. Michael, thanks so much for your time today. Just in closing, your optimism meter, so to speak, on a 10-point scale, roughly, how optimistic are you for Rhode Island? I think this is an important thing right here, because I know that there's a lot of sentiment right now amongst especially Gen Z and millennials, really everybody, but I think Gen Z and millennials, that are really literally asking the question, should they stay in Rhode Island? Your optimism meter?
Yeah, I'm a Rhode Islander at heart. I think I would give us a 5. I am concerned that, we're now fighting a millionaire's tax and trying to get the legislature to and cities and towns to control spending. I don't think those trends are very good for us, raising taxes and raising spending. So I think that's where I'm more at a 5. But I'm hoping that people will see that these economic issues as being more important.
Michael DeBias, RIPEC, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.